welcome to the Soft Cock Week podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Renee. As a surrogate partner and intimacy guide, many times clients approach me to fix their dick. This led me to create Soft Cock Week in 2022, an annually celebrated week of education, appreciation, and normalization of the flaccid phallus. I'm so happy you're here. Before we get started, this podcast is not a replacement for medical advice. In fact, when you notice any change in your body, especially in how your penis is functioning, please always seek medical consultation first. Now let's get started. Welcome back to Soft Cock Week. I'm Michelle Renee. I'm a surrogate partner, intimacy guide, and professional cuddler out of San Diego, California. And we have Mish Middelmann with us today. I want to say all the way from, where are you from? I keep saying it's either New Zealand or Australia.
Well, I grew up in South Africa, and
Oh,
I
okay.
now live in Toronto, Canada. But my roots are in Southern Africa.
Okay, I totally had you messed up. I think it's because of how I found you. Being a friend of mine turned me on to you from Cam Fraser, who is out of Australia, correct? If I have
Great.
the
And
map correct.
Cam and
Okay.
I had this fabulous Trust the Generations conversation about men and sexuality about, I don't know, 2 years ago or so.
Yeah, you hit the radar of Ruby Ryder, who is a dear friend of mine who does her specialty is pegging. So anal sex for prostate owners. She knows everything there is to know about prostates. And so you caught her eye, and she has connected me to your world, and then you got into the Soft Cock Week world and have been such a great supporter of the first annual Soft Cock Week last year. And I was so happy that we got to get you into a time zone that I could really work with. I didn't realize that you were in Toronto full time. So this is super cool to have you here, Mish. Thank you for all of your retweets and just like really wonderful support of this, because there's a few of you out there. And when I started this so grassroots last year, it was fun to see who picked up on it. And you were definitely one of the people that picked up on it. And I got to share then a lot of your work too. So for the people at home, tell us a bit about yourself, Mish.
Well, I guess how else can I start? But, I'm 65 years old and I'm the proud owner of a soft cock.
Yay!
Um, that sometimes gets hard, I'm glad to say. But the weird thing about being born with one is that the thing just gets hard all the time, most of your life, or most of my life anyway, often inappropriately and often awkwardly. When it stops doing it so exuberantly and eagerly, it's a huge shock. And now mine has for me, it happened through prostate cancer. So I had my prostate removed at the age of, I think I was just 61, nearly 4 years ago. And then started this journey of erectile dysfunction that is now sort of halfway, it sort of sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't, it's like so unlike the classical male thing of like you're on or you're off. It's like, well, I'm sort of in between.
Yeah.
And I guess that's how I'll start, by introducing myself.
Can I just cut to the chase? Are you having good sex?
Yes.
Yay, that's what I want to hear, right?
Yeah.
When I started this last year, one, I started it because I got a lot of men coming to me saying something's wrong with my penis. And it was so, I want to say that the number one problem was it doesn't stay hard 100% of the time. And I was like, that's your problem? Like, that is normal. We need to have what did I call it? Reparative sex ed was a term I kind of came up with the other day. Reparative sex ed, because if we're getting most of our sex ed through pornography, we're only seeing an edited version of sex, and we have really messed up ideas of how penises work based on that.
Exactly.
And so then I started this week, and I was quickly reminded that not everyone is enthusiastic about a soft penis the way that I am. I had to make space for a lot of grieving that needed to happen in the community. And it's nice to I like bringing people on that are like, there's another side to this. Like, you can move through the grief
Mm.
and get to the other side and still have great sex. Because that is the thing.
Thank you. Mm.
I don't have a magic wand when clients come to me to work on this issue. It's like they think I must have a hidden user
Mm.
manual somewhere that I just need to do a reset button and everything comes back online. Um, and my whole goal with clients is to help them learn how to show up for sex no matter how their penis shows up for sex, that there is still this really rich, wonderful sex life ahead for them. And it's just nice to have someone here that can say, yeah, stamp of approval, Michelle, you
Mm.
know, you're doing the only thing that I can do, right,
Mm.
is to say,
Mm.
let's just work with what we have and have a new relationship with sex. And
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And thank you for speaking about the grieving as well, because I mean, a hard cock is a lovely thing. Certainly, speaking as the owner of one, I mean, it's fantastic, and I miss it. And when it's there, it's just fabulous, and it's a great sex toy, I believe, from my partner's point of view too. So so it's like, yes, it is a loss, and I'm very fortunate that I sometimes get it back.
Mhm.
But if I was to, and I mean, the main issue for me is to stop thinking about what it isn't, because that reverberates, and it's not just personal, it's in our culture. And as
Mhm.
you said, everybody's picturing those hard cocks and like, why isn't mine like that? And I think it's really hard to have good sex without a hard cock, not because it's not fun and physically pleasurable and loving and connecting in our culture as much as ourselves, that sort of says this is not the real thing.
Yeah. And how do you show up and be present for
Mhm.
sex with your partner if you're in your head the whole time asking where your penis is, right? Where's your hard
Have you
penis?
have you heard the most lovely comment that interjected that Joe Milios, the wonderful Australian physiotherapist, made? Was she just said it in passing? She said, "And everyone knows a watched cock doesn't come."
A watched cock doesn't come. I'm so glad this is recorded because that's going to make
And that
a
I just want to
meme for
attribute
this
it.
week.
Yeah, I want to attribute it to Joe Milios. She's like one of the best pelvic floor physiotherapists specializing in men in the world, and a world leader in this whole field.
It's wonderful. I'll have
But
to
it's
connect.
such an insight that, like,
Yeah.
if I'm thinking about whether it's gonna come or whether it's gonna be hard enough or whatever, man, it's so hard to come. And if I just let go, you know what?
Well, it's hard to
Good
come,
things
but
happen.
it's hard to, you're not with your partner. I remember
Exactly.
I've had conversations with previous partners, and I'm like, where do you go during sex? We have taught our teenage boys to literally think of something else while they're having sex so that they don't ejaculate,
Right.
and then they're not with you. And so I have clients
Yes.
that as soon as we get naked, they go, I can tell they're suddenly not with me in the space. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What you're thinking about your
Mm.
penis right now. Let's think about me. Let's follow where I'm touching you. It's almost like taking meditation practices and moving them into
Yes.
the bedroom to say, can you keep your mind on what's happening with your body? Where are my fingertips right now?
Right.
And
Right.
just every time your thought starts to drift, just bring it back, right? Oh, I
Yeah.
started to think about it. It's okay. Bring it back because
Lovely. Mm.
a watch cock. Yeah. Hmm.
Well, what I've been doing, because this sort of happened to me rather suddenly, and so it's brought on the benefit is that, I was more than 60, so I had some idea about what you've just spoken about.
Hmm.
But then the experience of prostate cancer tends to bring on like radical changes in our bodies overnight. You go into the hospital one day, and the next day, a whole lot of things work differently to what they've done your whole life. Um, I think that is an opportunity for us as men to learn more about what it is to have a penis and to have at least had a prostate,
Hmm.
um, because it's like encapsulated. initially in a short time, and different men, some people recover in 6 months, some people in 12 months, some people in 3 years, some people, well, all of us stay different for the rest of our lives. And some of us get erections again. Like I say, I get erections sometimes, and other times, and they fade quite often, but I can get full erections sometimes and kind of be like the old days.
Yeah.
But what gets interesting there is, like, how can we support each other around this? And it's particularly obvious, I think, with straight men, because there's a whole kind of awkwardness about talking about sex to other men, and like there's a whole thing that just like you have to have a hard cock, you also need to not want to play with other ones, according to straight men.
Don't talk
Which,
about them, don't look at
yeah,
them, don't,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
So my world doesn't feel as sort of boundaried in that way personally, but most of the men who come to my support group would identify, I think, probably primarily as straight, not all of them. And I certainly don't want to restrict it to men who identify as straight. And like, I wish I'd grown up now when the sort of non-binary world and the queer world was a little more open. That's kind of how I would really identify. But there's something about what allows men to talk about this to other men. And I think that's the other thing that hangs over this world. You've talked about some of the things that kids grow up with and so on, but the other thing that sort of hangs over this is the sort of barroom talk, the again, the image of what a man's supposed to look like, which is sort of never having really any emotions, but having a lot of sex and being very successful at that. And if it's broken, then you fix it. I don't think the world is really like that. I don't think anything gets fixed as much as we would like, and the kind of the bigger events of the world are in the same vein, I think. But I think it's been astonishing to me how men can actually talk to each other about very intimate things without grabbing each other's cocks, or grabbing them if they want. But I mean, it's not a requirement to be gay to be able to talk about it, or to be non-binary to be able to be vulnerable. And actually, straight men are just as vulnerable as anyone else.
Absolutely.
And what I'm finding is that when we talk to each other, we gain some strength from the little bits of vulnerability, the little bits of learning, the little bits of mindfulness that each of us is generating separately. Together, it becomes quite powerful.
Yeah. I think I've always been the person that was really comfortable talking about sex. And so for me, even like I know there's people in my life that have not always been comfortable talking about sex, but they get around me, and because I start the conversation, they go, "Oh, I could talk about this." And I think that that's what I see you doing with your support group, right? You're willing to step forward and hold the space. I guess we should back up and say, Mish has a wonderful support group for men that are coming out of prostate cancer. Is that how you would describe
Pretty
it?
much,
Or
yeah.
going through the process of treatment? Or
I've always built it as affected by prostate cancer and men's sexual health. So it's not, you don't have to have prostate cancer to come to the group, but you need to know that's the sort of center of the group. And not all the men who come to the group have prostate cancer, and sometimes people without, who don't identify as male come to the group as well. But the central point is men who had prostates and have penises and either no longer have prostates or at least have prostate cancer and the various things coming with it. And it did come out of a website where I kind of had this experience nearly 4 years ago, and like nobody seemed to be able to talk to me about the more intimate aspects of what was going on. And the medical world was very driven by proving that they could fix it. And when I said, well, you seem to have fixed the cancer, and you've more or less fixed the urine control, but their sexual function's a bit more complicated, they were like, well, if it isn't fixable, then it's not really our business. We don't. And my surgeon was very honest. He said, I'm a great surgeon. I'm not good at this other stuff.
Yeah.
So I wished others would tell me their stories, and they weren't doing it. So I started telling my own. So that's Weekended Spirits in that way. I was just blessed
Yes.
with feeling okay about saying, well, if I had a broken leg, I would tell people. If I have a broken penis, I also can tell people.
Yeah.
Um,
It takes all of us stepping up and somebody stepping up and telling their story, and then it becomes like a snowball effect in so many ways. When I got divorced in 2014, when I finally started to talk about it, this was I first learned like how powerful vulnerability is. That was
yeah.
back in the day when Brene Brown was going really viral for her
Mm,
TED talk about vulnerability. And I said my piece, maybe in not the prettiest fashion at the time. And I started to get all these private messages from people saying, oh, thank you for sharing that. That resonates with me, XYZ. And I was like, whoa, there's a lot of gift. Like, there's a big gift in being vulnerable. Not only was it a gift to the people that I was talking to, but it was a gift for me more than anything to
mm,
just feel closeness when I felt so alone.
mm. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I want to say, for me as a man, around about the same time, someone said that to me, Mish, I wish you'd show a bit more of your vulnerability.
Hmm.
Around about the same, mid 2010s somewhere. And what I'm just remembering is that it didn't make sense to me because I was so aware of my vulnerability. I was like, what do you mean show my vulnerability? I'm crawling under the carpet here. But that's not what I look like. I
Hmm.
look like a tall, white, English-speaking man with grey hair. I mean, all these sources of rank and privilege in the world are like piled onto me. And like that's what I think most men with all those privileges don't realize is that walks into the room with us. And
Hmm.
so I might be feeling like a little worm, but that's not what people see.
Hmm.
And and there's a code that is inculcated into us as men before we're conscious about how we can't show vulnerability. So much so that, like, when someone said it to me, I didn't know what they meant. And I think of my best friend who came out as gay at the age of 50, and how, again, when I asked him about it, how come he didn't even tell me? He's like, well, I don't know. Nobody told me not to tell anyone, but I knew I couldn't tell it.
Hmm.
I knew I couldn't tell anyone until I just fell so in love with a man that I couldn't hide it
You
anymore.
couldn't not tell someone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but and was basically outed, I think, by his wife. But
Mm.
it's like there's something that is part of being a man, and it's not personal, it's systemic, that says I keep my vulnerability inside,
Yeah.
and I even keep my sexual non-straightness inside, and I
Mhm.
um, and it's a kind of a shared illusion that we all create together. Like you just said, porn plays into that, and the role of men in society plays into that. And people like me, and my dad was like that too. I look back and go, when he died, my aunt said, "What am I going to do without my sensitive brother?" And I was like, "What do you mean, your sensitive brother?" My dad he used to joke about eating cement for breakfast, and he was like a corporate executive. He's got no vulnerability. Now he's been dead many years. I realized he had plenty of vulnerability, but he didn't really know how to show it, and he would probably bluster a bit when he did feel vulnerable. And I think that I can own that too. That's my go-to place if I'm vulnerable, is to kind of get angry.
Mhm.
And and I think that's part of my legacy as just a male human being, is that's sort of what the society's taught me. And this cancer, I mean, one of the guys on our group this morning just said, this cancer has been a gift.
Mhm.
And that's like
Yeah.
quite an extreme statement, but there are gifts of the cancer. And one of them for me has been to go, yep, I don't know what to do.
Mhm.
And I get into bed with my wife, and we kind of get going, and then I fade, and it's sort of awkward. And like I said, I sort of become aware of myself, and she sort of goes, well, don't you love me if you can't get it up, you
Mm.
know? And and that's vulnerable. It's like I'm not, like I'm on stage, but I've lost my script.
Yeah.
And essentially, we've had to get off the stage. If we're off the stage, it's fine. But while we're on the stage in the spotlight, until we create a new script, and that's why I try to introduce myself, proud owner of a soft cock, because I think there could be a new script where I'm on stage and I've got this big, heavy thing slapping against my thigh and these balls dangling, and I'm powerful and I'm loving and I'm caring and I'm soft.
Yeah.
Like, that's the new script I want.
I love that script. I don't know, I haven't done a deep dive to find it, but is there erotica for soft penises? Like, I would love that.
Oh, wow. If Electric Blue is listening, you've got another customer. I've been chatting with a writer of erotica. I'm kind of wanting to write it, and that's where those words probably came from. But I've been
Yeah.
chatting to someone who wrote some erotica that worked for me and my wife. And I just wrote to him and said, we read your story together and we got off on it. It was amazing. And he said, oh, thank you.
Oh, please send
He
it
said, have
my
you got any
way.
dreams? Have you got any dreams about stories? I said, I want soft cock erotica. And he said, no promises, but maybe something will come
Yeah.
of it.
I
'Cause
mean, I would love to be connected just to give the push of like, if it is created, I want to
yeah,
be able to spotlight it.
yeah. Well, I mean, this is from a website called Lit Erotica, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have that genre, you know?
Yeah.
It has all
Yeah.
kinds of genres, but it doesn't have that. And it has a mature genre, but it's kind of young and old. That's what it's defined as, spring and autumn romances. And I'm like, what about old and old? That's my
Yeah.
life, is old and
Yeah.
old. And it's different. And I,
Well,
I want to push that.
I'm gonna go to Literotica and say, if you create it, they will come, right? Like,
Absolutely.
if you
I
build
will
it, they
read
will
and I will
come.
write because there is something glorious about being softly sexual.
Hmm.
And there's, again, for the men listening to this, most men, my experience as a man was that sexuality was really concentrated around my cock and a sort of a 6-inch diameter around it. I could feel it a
Hmm.
little in my groin, my balls, maybe my belly if I was lucky. Now my erotic sensation is 100% from my toenails to the tips of my hair. And my sexual penetration, you could use the word, or intertwinement with my partner, is absolutely from our toes to our fingertips.
Hmm.
And my peaks of sexual ecstasy don't always have the rhythmic pulsation of an orgasm, but they're still orgasmic. Sometimes they do have the rhythmic pulsations, but they don't have ejaculate because I haven't got a prostate anymore.
Yeah.
So I have all the experiences I had before, but now it's like the radar screen has widened to cover our whole bodies and a couple of kilometers on each side of them. And the hard thumping kind of orgasm and a million other forms of radiance beyond those.
It's like your skin can just be electrified,
Absolutely.
right? Like, uh, we mystify this idea of like the energetic orgasm in some circles, and I don't know if people think it just doesn't exist and that it's just made up, maybe tantra thing or what have you, but like, no, you can absolutely have this full body electrified sensation without even touching genitals. So in
Right.
those cases, the hard penis is not needed.
Right.
Is
The
absolutely
thing
not needed.
my sort of frontier, and maybe this is not for this particular conversation, but maybe someone listening is going to call in about this, that there's all that Mantak Chia and those people that my wife and I read with huge enthusiasm 10 or 15 years ago about really separating orgasm and ejaculation and being multi-orgasmic regardless of your gender. And I kind of got halfway there back then when I was about 50
Mhm.
and just horny as hell. I wanted to try everything. I think I've gotten further now just because the standard route is less easy to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been having lots of things that I've written about, I've called mini peaks. But I mean, what I had this weekend was a maxi peak. I mean, and it was in all, I think I want to call it an orgasm. Um, it didn't have, I think, in all genders with a typical orgasm, but all the other radiance and peak and sort of release and satisfaction were there. And I'm wondering if I found the sort of Mantak Chia separation of ejaculation and orgasm that I couldn't quite do when I was 50.
Yeah, that just reminds me of like an expanded definition of orgasm or an expanded idea of what orgasm is. Because back in the day, people who have listened to much of my story, which I haven't told it on this Soft Cock Week podcast, I don't think, but on my other podcast, I've talked about my journey into getting a better relationship with my orgasm. And what I've never said, I don't think publicly, is that I was working with a woman named Betty Dotson. I don't know if you came across her in
Very
your time.
famous, yes.
Yes. And I remember there was a point where she said something about anything you feel, like you feel that spark of something, that's an orgasm. And when I was struggling with orgasm, that was enough to like, oh, it changed the story in my head that I struggled with orgasm, because if I could make orgasm a much broader idea, then I too could be multi-orgasmic, or even just a orgasm if it was just a spark. And that spark
Oh,
got to
this is
build.
exciting. Yes.
Yeah, that spark got to build for me to where maybe the traditional sensation of orgasm was much more it was easier for me to get there. But in the beginning, I think having that spark, that expanded idea of what orgasm was, changed the story in my mind, that
Yes.
I had a hard time with
Yes.
orgasm.
Yes, yes, yes. And let me bring my male example of that. That there's a whole literature about blue balls and all that.
Mm-hmm.
That like if we haven't come, then it's awful and it's unhealthy and it's damaging and blah blah blah. I haven't really ever subscribed to that personally, but I have definitely felt that sense of disappointment of not like getting over the edge.
Yep.
And now I'm being asked in an analogous way to what you asked, to just find the rolling hills.
Mm-hmm.
And and my wife is also grappling with some similar issues. And we're both saying if we allow those rolling hills to be beautiful, then a lot more becomes possible. If
Yep.
there is sort of only one cliff that you have to go over, then every other hilltop, however many flowers there are, however beautiful and fresh the breeze is, it's not the right one.
Yeah,
And
you're
I just
missing
think we
it.
could let go of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where getting away from penis centered sex, where you have to have this hard cocked for penetration. And you don't, I mean, you need a hard cock for some kinds of penetration, but it, getting away from that script is the only way that you're going to have this. Whether maybe you always have a hard penis, you have so much that you're missing one dot of sex rather than
Hmm.
this entire world of sex. And yeah.
One of the guys, I should tell the story now. One of the guys who came to my website and has, I think, one of the guys I've met through this whole process told me the story about how disappointed he was when his erections came back. He said,
Hmm.
for the first year or so, I had no erection at all. And, people's penises sometimes shrink a lot during that time as well. So he said, it felt more or less like I had a vulva. And it was really nice. And
Aw,
when erections started coming back, it kind of got a bit in the way.
that's
And I offer that
fascinating.
as an example. Like, I've met this person and he's kind of quite macho, So this was not about him trying to um, shift his gender identity. He just said being soft down there felt really nice.
Yeah. It's a different
And it did come back,
experience.
but he
Yep.
just said, I loved it.
I imagine he got to play just he got to hold a different space.
That's what I find. Is it it asks me, and it asks my partner as well, to shift roles quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent, that's just lovely. And at other times, it's a bit like, you get a little lost. You're sort of somewhere and there's no map anymore, because there were things that we both used to do that sort of took over almost automatically in the height of sexual passion. And now those, you have to find a new way. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be glib about this. I don't think that if you're listening to us talk and you're going, I'd like to stop being so rigid in my definition of what sex is and isn't. That's a great breakthrough, but don't expect it to just sort of easily change. There will be times when the old patterns kind of shake their fists and say, like, where's the erection and where's the penetration, and do you still love me, and all those kind of questions come up from both sides. And yeah, for me, you use the word mourning, there's a grief in that, there's and a sort of a lostness. I'm a little lost right now.
And
I don't
that's
quite
the
know where to go
vulnerability.
sexually, that kind of
That
feeling.
Yeah, that's the vulnerability of that's what real
Mm,
to me. My definition of intimacy is a much broader definition than I think we got stuck using code words, right? Because censorship is a real bitch. And
mm,
we can't just say sex anymore. We have to code it in different words.
mm,
And so
mm,
intimacy has kind of gotten hijacked as a
mm.
code word for sex. But
Yes.
I think of intimacy as the vulnerability, as the showing up authentically, and to
Mm,
take those feelings of, do you still love me? Are you still attracted to me? And having those out of your head and spoken to your partner to have a conversation is like an opening. It's an opportunity to have intimacy, to talk about what are the things that we're afraid of. I'm afraid that you're not attracted to me anymore, and you're
mm.
afraid that I'm not a good lover anymore. Or like, these things are opportunities to just have a different level of intimacy that is so
Yes.
much more than just keeping it in your head and hiding behind, like keeping those fears and hiding behind your macho-ness, or maybe
Mm,
you're even avoiding physical intimacy because you don't know what's going to show up and you're afraid
right.
to navigate that new map.
So I just want to just really respect what you said, because I think that voice usually comes from people born as women in my life. So my wife has spoken a lot for that. And I'm speaking for it now, but I just want to acknowledge that
Yeah.
it didn't start with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and she kept saying, Mish, focus more on intimacy. Don't focus so much on getting off.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about, and I kind of get it now. Like, that's why we're having this conversation. But I want to just sort of acknowledge that I didn't really. And I think part of it is that this body that I was given um, got off really easily and loves getting off, and left to its own devices will do it very frequently, and sometimes very quickly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that perhaps is not the same as the intimacy you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of a shooting off that comes with a male body that is not that intimate, really, you know? And I mean, I don't know if there
It
are
doesn't
many men
always.
who haven't sort of jerked off onto the floor, which is not intimate at all. You're just standing there and this thing feels really nice and you rub it and then things happen. Um, and so I think it's sort of to be a relatively straight man. We often don't really get invited into intimacy by our lives, and sometimes if we're straight and a heterosexual kind of straight, we might have wives who kind of manage the intimacy side for us and provide the getting off experience for us, but to sort of slow down enough to get really into our own intimacy as men, I think that for me has taken a while, and I think it's taken aging, and it's been helped by my um, physical body kind of going on strike a bit
Mm-hmm.
and saying, well, dude, you can't have that quick release that you. I mean, what can you do? You're born with the damn thing, right? And it's nice. So I don't want to be guilty about it, but I just want to go. There's a lot more out there that
Yeah.
the average that for me as a man anyway, I didn't fully get. I still knew and I wanted, and that's my attraction to sex, but I'm not sure that I fully got it.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a lot of my work is trying to help people get it. Like as a like in my work in intimacy, it's like I want to expand people's ideas of intimacy, and that's why I do a lot of work that's not sexual. Is like see if you can show up in a way like if we get I'm just going to talk as somebody who doesn't have a penis and I don't really know what it's like to be on your side. But it seems like on my side we I say we the male-bodied person shows up, and if I'm taking them into sexual intimacy, it's just like I know what I know, and it's like a straight line, and it's how do I describe it? It's I want it to not be a straight line. I want it to be a more curvy mountain road, and like in and out of different spaces that is not just this we're trying to get to this destination. And part of that
Yes.
curvy road is little stops to say what's going on for you. You know, I'm the kind of person that will pause something and say I have to tell you this thing that just popped in my head because I don't want it in my head anymore, and it might not make any sense, but I need to just share it. Like that to me is the sweet spot of being naked next to another body.
So for me, this what you're speaking to so beautifully is the sort of straight me loves that about a woman, that she has that softness and those curves and that complex journey and the pathway that is not so direct and simple and obvious. So there's a part of me that loves that and is deeply attracted to that, but often what I used to anyway bring is the hard part that penetrates that and has a direction. And that just is what it is, I think, as a young man. And I can see, I kind of feel for you if you're a woman and you're attracted to men that you have to deal with us being so simple. What I can offer is take a pill, wait 10, 20 years, and we might get a bit more complex, you know?
Oh, absolutely. So I happen to be a woman who has lovers on both ends of the age spectrum, and there is a difference. There is a real difference, and I love them all. I love them all.
Right. Well,
But
I mean,
it's
I think that youthful exuberance and eagerness and directness and hardness is fabulous too. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So
no,
let's not put that wrong.
but we
But
all
I'm gonna just
change.
take, yeah.
We all change. It doesn't matter if you end up going through prostate cancer or not. As you age in both, no matter what gender you're born in, things change, and we're all, I think, working through our own grieving process
Yes.
of those changes. I know myself as somebody who's definitely in perimenopause now. There are changes happening, and I have to let go of who I used to be. Right? I have to. Otherwise, I'm living in this, why can't it be like it used to be? And that is not present.
So that's just, like I often say, the number one energetic, I call it a meta skill, that kind of come from place for the 21st century is adaptability. It's like, it's the one thing we all have to be good at to survive this century. So beautifully spoken for that. Just before we run out of time, I want to, I think we agreed we're going to talk about support.
Yeah,
and
we should probably touch on that more.
I also think what's showing up is two different ways into support. Like you come into support for men visibly and technically in a female form. And I come into support visibly and technically in a male form. And like, what are we learning from those two different ways? Like it's pretty obvious to me there's no right way. But it's like maybe we can spend a few minutes just kind of going, so what's coming from these two different approaches to support, or the two different embodiments of the person who's holding the space for that to happen?
Yeah, I want to say, I think it's a both. We need both, and I wish it was easier for men to access support from men. Right? I think that it's a natural draw to get the support from either their partner or a professional.
Yes.
In the female body. I think
so.
It's missing something, though. It's like, I think men are missing that component in their life, whether they're dealing with sexual dysfunction or not. That I remember an article years ago talking about how men just don't have the depth of friendship that women do, and they're missing out, right? They're putting a lot of emotional labor on their partner. And it's necessary for a full, rich life to have these close relationships with other men. And that's
a new frontier for most of us.
Yes.
So just let me say, thank you for that. And let me say that my experience with this, that I say started a bit randomly, that I just needed other guys to talk to about what was going on in my body and my heart and my relationship and my life, and nobody else was doing it. What's emerged from that, and we just had like our 30-second call, so that's, I don't know, 2-3 years of these calls. It's helped that it's on Zoom. So there is freedom to be your own sexual being in your own space, and we're not having to address the question of sexuality between the members of the group because we're all in different physical locations. It seems that there's a process of deepening. So we're coming off the street from a world where, as men, we're expected to show up, as my therapist once said, numb from the neck down, and kind of project through our outer body and our heads, our competence and everything, and to talk about solutions. It's very much to talk about solutions. And most of the reason I started the group is most of the online support groups were just talking about medical insurance and technical medical solutions, like what's the best technical solution to this problem. And I quickly realized that some of it isn't going to get fixed by either of those. So we're coming off the street, thinking solutions, holding a sort of persona of invulnerability. And what I notice on each call is that we start there and then somebody drops down just a little bit and says, I'm feeling really bummed out. And then somebody else drops down a little further and says, I really miss my erections. Or somebody said, I wet my pants. And the whole circle then functions at that deeper level. And that's the essence of the support happening, is that, like, you have told me what it's like for you, and I will tell you what it's like for me. And we never go back up again. We might stay at that level for a while, and then somebody else is touched enough to share a bit deeper, and then we function at that level. And the next time we meet, we come back to the surface again. But I think those who've been there a bit longer tend to sort of more quickly take the opportunities to step us down.
The muscle gets built.
And then I want to say that one of the men who was a strong supporter of this, has been a strong supporter of this group, and we've made friends, although we never met each other. We've made friends through this work. He reported back recently that he was off on a men's mountain biking weekend. So, like, the most macho thing, 5 guys on their mountain bikes all day long, coming back, having a beer, having beers together, eating, dinner together, for several days. And then he said on the last morning at breakfast, one of the guys just said, "Oh, how are you doing? With your cancer or something," which is already breaking the male code, right? You're not supposed to ask that. But someone did ask him, so he answered. And then one of the other guys said, well, I've been having a bit of trouble down there too. Doesn't have prostate cancer. And then a third guy chipped in. And he said he essentially saw exactly the same thing happening without it being billed as a support group. without other people having prostate cancer. So what I'm kind of saying is there's something about men that we can create the space where we support each other. And it doesn't reflect at all on our sexuality or our weakness. It just reflects on our ability to share.
Yeah.
And
People want an
that's,
invitation. They want an
yeah.
invitation to share. And when that first
Mhm.
person takes that drop in, as you said, there's the invitation. I think everybody's waiting for it. So with or without a formalized support group, who wants to be the brave one to go first? Because I promise you, there is a reward on the other side of that.
Definitely. And it will look different for each person who's listening to us speak. For some people, you will just find the only way you loosen up is when there's somebody with those softer curves that you're talking to. And, you know, Michelle, you and many others are offering that, and it's fantastic. And many of us, that's how we soften up and loosen up. And there's people like me who's saying, well, I have that same hard body, but it has softness in it as well. And, you know, you might like to talk to other men where there's a sort of shared obviousness about what's hard in us and what's directive and demanding in us, because that is part of what the legacy of being a man is, and it doesn't need to limit us.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're in this world, Mish, doing what you're doing. And I'm glad that we've been connected. And I feel so honored to have had this time with you and to share what feels like a real heart-to-heart connection. Like, I just want to send my love to you through the screen. Big hugs.
Thank you so much. And to you and the lovely work you're doing and your care for us men. It's fantastic. And just if there is somebody listening who particularly people who have prostate cancer and related issues, www.recoveringman.net is the website where all the stories are being shared. And I'm up for publishing your story if you're listening. And in that same website, there's a section called Conversations, and in there you'll find the registration for the support group, which meets roughly every 3 weeks in different time zones around the world. So there's one that suits your time zone roughly every month and a half, and if you're lucky, it'll be every month, depending on where you live.
That's awesome. I know we have lots of links to lots of your stories in our resource section at softcockweek.com, and I'll be putting together the show notes when this releases. And I want to send my partner to you just for the men's support in general. I think he would thrive in that space. He has a lovely soft heart. I love him.
I mean, it's fabulous to have the both, I think.
Absolutely.
And it makes the world a better place.
It does. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Much love.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have you back next year.
Love back at you.
Wow, do I enjoy talking about soft cock. Thank you for listening. If you didn't catch the video version, I invite you to find us on YouTube or Spotify with video. If you found this podcast to be helpful and you feel you can give us 5 stars, I invite you to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. New episodes of the Soft Cock Week podcast only drop during the week of Soft Cock Week, so please make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of them. Lastly, give us a follow on social media and check out our resources, Soft Cock love notes, and events at softcockweek.com. Signing off from Southern California with so much love. Mwah.